thanks for making it to the very end. I know everybody's kind of brains are full and everything, but we'll try and make it exciting for you guys and a little bit enlightening as well. We'll talk about some of the stuff that maybe we haven't really talked about today so far. So, scalable API design and lifecycle for the future. Well, I really loved the theme of this event because if we're talking about the future API stack, I don't know how we can talk about that without talking about the full API management lifecycle. So to me, the stack needs to support not just some of the things you might be thinking of as API management, but it's some more things as well, right? So we'll talk a little bit about what does that mean for the future of the API stack. We're the Axway Catalyst, so if you guys haven't heard of us, my name is Brian Otten. I work with the team. John Weiss is here as well from the Catalyst team. And you'll find us all over the globe. We're speaking at events like this. You can see what we're up to at the website there. And we're really all about digital transformation, helping optimize those customer experiences so organizations can go through digital transformation. We can knock down any barriers. We can help you with strategy, right? We can look at your API strategy in the context of digital transformation, right? We can help you sell it internally. We can help you forge the right relationships and really talk about what it means to have a successful strategy to deliver digital transformation. All right, so who's excited? Let's build an API. Everybody excited? Come on, let's hear it. All right. Whoa there. Wait a minute. Why are you guys getting so excited? What are we building, right? And why? So doesn't this represent what you've probably experienced as an API initiative? I know that I've seen it a million times, right? Everyone gets all excited about APIs, and then nobody stops to think about what are we doing, right? We're going to go off and build APIs. I've seen it. Customers think that API strategy is all about just doing a bunch of public APIs. We're going to have a really slick developer portal. We're going to put stuff out there, and then everyone's going to come and consume our APIs. It's all about us producing APIs, right? It's not, right? It's not about that. It's not about, we're going to open up our systems to the outside world, and we're going to do integration, and we're going to expose all of our data. Not strictly about that either, right? APIs are about consumption. APIs are about making digital transformation real, and it's about making it real for your partners, and it's about growing your business, right? So you have to stop and think about what is it that we're actually trying to achieve. Now, I've heard today a couple of times that API strategy is needs to be business-centric, right? One of the first things that was said this morning in the keynote, it's got to be led by the business, right? And we all, I think, accept that, right? Does anybody not accept that API strategy has to be business-led and business-centric? Does anybody want to be brave and refute that? Okay, so would you think that the business needs to be involved in that? Absolutely yes, right? And yet we're all technologists, and how many times have we complained and said, well, we can't get access to the people in the business that we need, right? They're not telling us what they need, right? And then on the business side, the business people are saying, well, we've told them what we need, and they're not building the right thing, okay? So you have this friction between the people who are doing the digital strategy, who are coming up with the digital products. They're coming up with the new innovation, but the innovation's not happening because the technology people are just not able to move quick enough, right? So it helps to take a few steps back before you just go into launching it and building, right? Because everybody was ready to build, right? When I said, yeah, let's build an API, everyone's like, yeah, let's do it. But take a few steps back, right? In your organization, are you thinking about what is the value of the API, right? Are you, as an API provider, thinking about how your APIs are going to make people's lives easier, right? Are they going to relieve pains? Do you know what the pain points are? Do you know what the gains are? Why are we doing APIs? What is that going to do? What is that going to create? Do we know how to design it, right? Based on whether we think we're going to relieve some pains, create some value, create some capabilities. Do we know how we're going to test this thing? And do we know how we're going to do this quickly so that we can iterate? We're not going to go away for 6 months and do our APIs and then make them available like I explained in the beginning, and then you whip off the sculpture, the cape, and it's like, here are our brand new shiny APIs. But now we realize that that wasn't what was required, so we got to go through that whole thing again. So it's all about what is your value proposition for your API as a provider. But I would argue also that as a provider, you have to think about your consumers. You got to get into the mind of who's consuming your API, right? You got to think like a product manager. How many people have heard the phrase API as a product? How many people would be able to offer a great definition of API as a product? Right? Everyone goes, yeah, API as a product. It's a great thing to do. But what does that actually mean? Well, if you think about it in terms of the value proposition of your API, then you can think like a product manager. I get this all the time and say, okay, well, we're not ready to do this in our organization. We don't have product managers, right? It doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter if you have project managers or not. You have people who think like project managers, and those are the people that you have to co-opt and start to think like product managers, right? You also have to think like a software developer, because the job of technology is to make it feasible, right? So it's no good if your consumers say, well, we want this, we want the moon on a stick, and that's going to be my product. But as technologists, we have to say, well, wait a minute, how are we going to secure that, right? How are we going to make that scalable? We don't have the data, we don't have access to the data, we don't have all these things. So thinking like a software developer and a technologist is also important, right? So you have to think like somebody who's using your API, right? Now there's some great ways to do this, and there are great ways for you to start collaborating with those people who are thinking like product managers, your business partners, right? People who think that they're just coders and I don't really get to talk to those people. That's got to change, okay? It makes it very, very difficult if you cannot collaborate with the people who are actually knowing what the value is and are driving the digital transformation and the digital products. So, at Axway, we, as the Catalysts, are delivering sets of workshops that we call Accelerate, and part of that is teaching people how to do it. So it's one thing to come up with the theory and one thing to talk about all these great, highfalutin ideas, but how do you actually get started? What are some of the practices? How can we start thinking about API as API operations, right? We've already made the jump to DevOps because we realized that if you're looking at development and operations in silos, it makes it very difficult to be agile. So part of the agile revolution is resulted in DevOps. Well, what about business operating with technology through business operations people and API operations, right? So you're thinking about these in terms of the pipelines that have to be supported by the API stack, okay? So one of the things that I love is the API value proposition canvas. It's a great way to get people together, people who are thinking about the product together as business people and technologists, and just starting to whiteboard it. I mean, this is an approximation of a whiteboard. I can't believe it. But if you imagine doing this with a team, you can actually start to map out what the value proposition of your API is. Okay, so you can look at what are the tasks, what are the jobs to be done. What is this thing going to do? We all have internal workflows that we need to support, that APIs can be a huge part of in turning those into digital workflows, right? We've got, who are the consumers going to be? What are the pains? At the moment, is it really painful to do something like, even something like passwords, where a user has to maintain two separate sets of passwords for different parts of our stack? What are the gains? Are we going to save time? Are we going to, cut costs? What is it that we're doing? So this is a really great way of actually mapping this stuff out, and then you have a model. You have a model that will actually inform your design. in the next part of the life cycle, okay? So this way you can avoid the, have you guys seen this before? It's the skateboard, bike, car. So this is the minimum delightful product. Not MVP, but the minimum delightful product. And if you start to map out how this is actually going to solve problems and how it's going to relieve pains, then you can avoid the top bit where somebody says they want a car, so you design the wheels first, then that as your second iteration, unhappy customer, right? But in the second one, you can see how actually little value here and there as you're going along and iterating actually leads to a much better result. Okay. Okay, the other thing about the life cycle is the real importance of design. So we also talk about design first. Okay, so doing the value proposition also leads to design. So it leads to being able to look at what's needed, building the contract, building the representation that somebody can interact with really quickly. It allows you to start to make use of standards. Okay, we talk about the ability to reuse APIs. Well, when you do design first, you're actually thinking what you have already. So if you have the ability to look at your existing designs, you can then reuse them much more easily. Governance is a huge thing. So how can you do governance by design? Are you thinking about that as part of your design built in? And does the developer have to worry about that? Does the developer have to worry about governance? Well, you can make that part of your design process. And then doing design first actually generates documentation. So you don't have to think of that as an afterthought. And I think the future API stack is starting to support this kind of stuff now. So you can talk to our partners at Stoplight about this, because we have the ability for people who don't even know OpenAPI spec to go in and create good designs. So thinking about the life cycle, I would reckon that most of your organizations look like the top picture, right? So the current life cycle looks something like, well, you have business people and product people coming up with a bunch of user stories, and then going through a pipeline where you're doing code, is passing on. There are all kinds of handoffs going on. There's all kinds of stuff happening there, and then it's not controlled. So there's very, very little control there. But what we can think about is that in the future API stack will be supporting things like people getting involved on the business side much more easily, right? So using things like value proposition, business models, and the spec. How many people think their life cycle kind of looks like the top? How many people are doing customer journeys and value propositions, and what does that mean?
Trying to,
yeah. What are some of the blockers for that?
Typical corporate, trying to do the customer journeys and agile properly, but not quite getting it. So a mix of the two, I would say.
Yeah. Is that because business people aren't involved, or?
Well, I think they're too involved. They try to run ship and steer which way tech is going, and it's just, it's not working well.
Right, okay. Is that because they don't realize the value, or?
How much time do we have? No, it's a good question. I'm not too sure how to answer it.
Okay. Right, okay. Well, as I said, the main thing is to simplify all this. You want to reduce handovers. You want to reduce the amount of friction in the API lifecycle. And again, I have to say that I would predict, I'm going to make a prediction now, and you can hold as you say, Brian, you were right, hopefully, that the future API stack will support some of this stuff at the beginning of the lifecycle, right? At the beginning when you're trying to decide what you're trying to build before you go off and build it. So I think the future stack is going to be all around that. We pretty much, a lot of us are kind of looking at here, where we pretty much got our DevOps pipeline, known and in place, and pretty much everyone has a strategy for that. But I think there's a huge gap in this area here where business and technology people need to work together and collaborate. I still think that's happening all over the place. Okay, now let's create some APIs. I'm going to hand over to John.
Okay, so everybody should have a lab handout. And what I want to do is I want to continue along with the story. And I wanted to give you a bit of a hands-on rather than just lecture on some of the aspects that are very easy. So let me hop out of here real quick. Okay, so what I'd like you to do in your own environment is, if you will go to HP, actually it's labs.axway, spelled with a XWAAY.com. Okay? And the written instructions are on there as well. And there's going to be a 4-digit code or a lab pin. What I'd like you to type in is 2838. And what this will do is it will spin up your own AWS instance and give you a web interface, a web SSH interface. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and select Start Session. The hands-on exercise is what you have in your hand. Okay? Why am I refused connection? The 4-digit code in that lab handout is different. The lab that was just for an example. So, okay. So you'll notice when I typed in my 4-digit lab, it gave me my own DNS entry. Okay. So each individual, when you go to run this lab, if you want to run it right now, you're welcome to run it right now. Okay. So we have a set of AWS instances running. They won't be up all the time, but they are running right now for you to participate in this exercise if you wish to. Okay. But if I go ahead and I do Start Session, what happens is it immediately brings up a web SSH interface. I am now in my own AWS instance. Okay. And what we want to do first is we're going to launch, as you may have seen in the previous slides, the Amplify Builder. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and launch the standalone Amplify Builder, which is a platform that allows you can build your own data models, which we're going to go through in our exercise, or you can leverage Stoplight or other utilities of that nature, build your own definition, and then import that into Builder. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to switch directory to my project. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and we're going to do npm start. So we're running a local instance, but we have this DNS. Okay, so you'll notice my DNS for my particular instance is right here. So I'm going to go ahead and open up a new tab. And I'm going to do port 8080, which is highlighting right here, /console. that's coming up. Okay. So here is Amplify Builder. It's a standalone. It's on your local desktop. Okay. It's a Node.js platform. What we're going to do here, so within this UI, I have the ability to set specific configurations. I can, by default, this is set up that I can do authentication. I can set port values. Okay. What I'd like you to do in this exercise is we're going to go ahead and create a brand new model. And we're going to mock up an API, okay? So the very first thing is we're going to go ahead and select model, and we're going to go ahead and call this customers. And we're doing an in-memory connector. The other value of Builder is that I could use MongoDB connectors. There are other connectors that I can expand this platform on. But for right now, I'm just going to go ahead and select an in-memory connector. So now I have my data model. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and add fields to this. Very easy. I'm just going to go ahead and do name, select required. Okay, and then I'm going to just add email address. The email. So now that I have my definition, I'm going to go ahead and just quickly set up a CRUD definition. So now I have my endpoints. Okay, and I could elect to select some of them, all of them. Go ahead and save that. Restarts the instance for you immediately. Now I can now this is mocked up. I can go into customers. I could download the Swagger file directly from here. I can test it. So for right now, I'm going to go ahead and add John. I'll do John birthday please at axway.com. Immediately created a new record. Okay, here's my result of my post. I can go to another method, and I can do, in this case, we'll do a get all or a find all. So I execute this, and here's my response. Okay. So now I've mocked up. The other benefit of this is that in the previous presentation you saw that there was a screenshot of a definition that was built, and it was of a campsite, and that had multiple models. Perhaps you want to make a composite API. I want to go out, first call, I want to go out and get weather, and then I want to select where my camp, reverse that. If I want to go select my campground, select my campsite, now I want to know what the weather is going to be like for the next 4 days. Okay. Within Builder, I can build a composite API as well. So I can make this very simple like we're doing here, or I have the ability to import a definition, and I can do a constructing sequence to do validation, authentication. Okay. So this is just the API Builder part of it. So now I have the ability to, and here's just the debug logs. From here, I have the ability to, from here I should say, okay? I can go ahead and stop Builder. Okay, so now Builder's stopped. I do have the ability within this package, I can create a Docker container. So now I have my container built. I have with my in-memory model. I have my data validations within my for my API. Okay. I have now a container available. I can go to OpenShift. I I can launch my container there. I could go to AWS and do Kubernetes and launch my container there. I can use Axway's platform. Within Axway platform, we have a utility called Runtime Services. So I have the ability to launch my container within Axway's runtime service. So now this is my back-end resource. Okay? Along with the platform, so now I would have it running within my runtime service, but I want to put security and governance around it. Okay, right now this is just the equivalent to an app server, but this is a cloud-based. Within the Axway Amplify platform, I have the ability to do Central, okay? And Central is I can build an API proxy within Amplify Central. As soon as it comes up, I can import my Swagger from my runtime service, from OpenShift, wherever I have my container running. I can import that Swagger, and now I can put governance around it. Hopefully this will come on. There we go. So now I have the ability to register an API. I can, in this case, I think I have a local file, so let me go ahead and do that, just so you can see. There, we'll do that. So this is an example from, I built the environment in Builder. I created a container. I launched it into runtime services. And now I've gone ahead and created an API proxy within Central. I have the ability, it shows me the definition of my API. Okay. My project. Okay. Let's do JB or JW. Let's go back. Let's see, where's my proxy? I think I went back. Okay. I'll do this exercise. So now I have my proxy created. From here, I have the ability to launch it within a test runtime. And this runtime is actually running in Central. Okay? So if I'm doing my lifecycle management, I would go from a development environment to a test environment to a production environment. Okay? So I can go ahead and deploy that configuration, and I now have a specific URL to get to that instance. Okay? I can add it to my catalog. So now it's discoverable. So here's my catalog. Okay? I can go into my catalog and I can subscribe to it. Let's see. So here's my definitions. Okay. But what I'm trying to show you here is the ease of the lifecycle management, but I've done it in the flow of API first, okay? I built my definition first. And then I'm utilizing the tools necessary to expand and enforce governance, enforce security. Anybody have any questions? Anybody have an opportunity to go through the lab? So the second part with the runtime services and the central, that is not in the lab. That was the second part of it, where you can sign up for an Axway platform ID, and that would give you access to some of these tools, and some of them are just open for trial purposes. Okay. Is there any questions I can help answer for anybody? Yeah, go ahead.
Can you show us the step you deployed the configuration file?
So there's a couple ways to do it. Okay, I did not go through the actual part, but so on the last step here, it tells you how to create the container. Okay.
That's the definition. You do the definition, go to container, and then you have the configuration file, right?
So I have the configuration of my, so I have a Swagger file, so I have the definition, okay? But what I've done is that I've rolled when I built my model in Builder, when I went to here, okay? You see how right now I built a data model within memory, and I'm doing I'm testing my endpoints, okay? Right now, I'm just working within the Amplified Builder utility. If I want to now move this to a managed platform like OpenShift or Kubernetes or Axway runtime services, okay, I can deploy that container to one of those endpoints.
So your configure file is in memory, local on your machine, right? And you go to the cloud to deploy?
Correct. So if I wanted to use Axway runtime services, for example, from here, okay, I can build a container, and I know that this is going to fail because of an AMI error, but I can run a Docker build current directory, and then I want to label it, and I can do my project and colon version, whatever version, okay?
Yeah.
So this command, because I have Builder standalone installed local on my laptop, okay, I would be able to build a Docker image. Now, once I have that image, I can deploy that image to wherever. And because I'm using an in-memory connector, when I deploy that image, the data that, when I ran that post and when I ran that get, all that data was just stored in memory, okay? So when I deploy that container, I'm gonna use an in-memory module. So that data is not stored in a physical database, if you will. Now, I could, in Builder, utilize a database connector. I could use MongoDB, and I could tell Builder, hey, how do I get to MongoDB? Okay? And then when I build my container, that container will have the instructions of how do I get to my MongoDB endpoint. Does that answer your question?
Yes, that makes sense.
Okay, so the one last thing, you had another question of it, I didn't deploy it, okay? Right now, I can build my container. With utilizing the Axway CLI for runtime services, from the command line, I can do publish command, and it will publish to Axway's runtime service.
But you haven't subscribed yet.
So that was, okay, so runtime service, think of it as your back-end server, okay? Central, think of it as your API proxy. That's where I'm doing my governance. Okay, and that's where I have it listed in my catalog for discovery. Okay. Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
So this is deployed in a Node and in a Node.js.
This is on a Node.js platform.
Node.js.
Builder is a Node.js platform.
Does it support other platforms also, like any application like Tomcat server?
So I can expand it and I can put it on Python. I can build other services. I do have the ability to expand from like using SDK and stuff like that.
Okay. And is there any way to, do some reverse engineering kind of generating source code, whatever the API you? So where does the API live? The one which you created from the build?
So all I did is that I just mocked up. I have a definition.
Yeah.
My API definition, and then I mocked up a server. Okay, so I'm mocking up endpoints, and then I built a container with those endpoints solely for testing purposes. I could build a container with real endpoints if I chose to, but in this exercise it was solely for. So the configuration files. So right now I created a project called My Project. Okay. The steps that I didn't do for you would have been this. I would have done API Builder. Init. And then my project name. So I'm going to call it Tom. Okay. So now I've created a brand new app called John. And then I can go into, let's see. What this will do is this will download. The reason that things are pre-configured is that we have a specific version of Builder installed and a project already created. If I create a brand new project and then I go in and I do the npm install, it will download a newer version of Builder. Okay, and that's to assure that the lab worked in the flow that it was intended. Some things were already pre-installed for you. Answer your question?
Yeah,
Okay.
sure. Thanks.
You had another question?
Does this have any option to have write the business logic on top of connecting to the database, then have some business logic implemented in it?
So there is a flow methodology in the Builder. Let me see if I can do something. Oh, I turned it off. So in Builder, you do have the ability to import your definition, okay? And then you can, within each endpoint, you can build a flow. And that's where I was describing the concept of a composite API, where I may do a get on, let's say, campgrounds, but that get is also triggering other endpoints to collect more data. I want to know the weather. I want to know, various information. So I can create a composite API. Okay.
Does it support different scripting languages to implement those logics?
So
Script or
ideally, what you can in Builder, you can use JavaScript and you can build data validation logic. Okay, but ideally, what you would want to use is a tool like Stoplight and build your definition in that and add your data validation. Perhaps you might want to do a regex for Latin longitude, okay? Or there might be a state field where it's only a 2-character field and you want to make sure that somebody doesn't add 4 characters. So you would put that type of logic in your definition. You can do it in Stoplight, okay? And you can expand your data validation, or you could go into Builder and you could write the JavaScripting validation. Okay. Yeah.
So I'm still confused, like what is the offering here? Like is the offering about API governance and management? And like if a client invokes the API, it will pass through Xway platform, but the actual business logic will still be handled by some other backend APIs? Or is the business logic also going to be handled on the API Central? Like,
So what I wanted to highlight here was mostly focused on lifecycle management. Okay, it wasn't so much about Central or Builder or anything like that. What I was leveraging is Axway's components to show. So what I did is that I built an API in Builder. So I defined what my API looks like. Okay, and then I created a container, and I deployed that to, in my case, into runtime services. Now I have a formal backend. Okay, so what I've done now is that I created an API proxy in Central, and with that API proxy, I am enforcing governance. I'm enforcing security. I'm making it discoverable in the catalog.
Understood. So basically, the real offering from Axway is the API governance and lifecycle management, not the fact that the runtime service is just an add-on if you want to run services in Axway.
Correct. I could have launched that container in OpenShift if I wanted to. Okay. It's wherever it's just that I was simplifying.
Understood. The real thing is that the API calls would still pass through the Axway platform for the governance part itself.
Yes. So they would go through Central as your front end, and that's where your governance is. And then upon success of that, then it is proxied back to your back-end engine.
And then on the platform, you could implement security,
Absolutely.
whatever you need.
Absolutely.
So, what are some of the scaling numbers? Because for external APIs, the requirements might be different, but usually when in a microservices architecture, you have a lot of different internal or private APIs just talking to each other, like over API.
Mm-hmm.
Do you recommend using this for private APIs, or just make it for public, or somewhat?
So I'm of the belief of an API is an API. It's all defined by who's the consumer. I've interacted with many clients and, well, I have public APIs and I have private APIs. The design phase of an API is the same. It's a matter of who's the consumer so you can wrap the correct security model around it. And you may have introduced quota if you're doing monetization.
So then the last question, is this deployed on premises, or it's just a service, software as a service?
Central is a service. Yeah.
So technically, if I am wanting to have private or internal, I know you don't like the word, but like,
No, that's fine. I understand what you're
internal
saying.
communication, then having Central might increase the response time, like an overhead of going through the internet instead of like just.
Well, so in the previous discussion, you may have seen where HIP or hybrid is most common. Okay, clients don't have 100% in the cloud or 100% on-prem. So we have a solution that matches that hybrid methodology. Perhaps I want some of it in the cloud, okay? And I can have an on-prem solution. Axway has an API gateway as well that I can release on-prem, and I can have my catalog. And then I have the ability to do mesh governance. So I can put an agent on the local, and I can manage it all from one interface. Does that help answer?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Anybody else? I appreciate everybody coming. Thank you very much.
Thanks, man.